All of these buildings all around here, as I told in class last night, they're ours. They belong to us. They're ancient, these buildings. There's a whole city underneath this city. They've went and burned all the major cities, the major energy centers. Our ancestors set up these energy centers that we call Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Atlanta, Detroit, right? Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles. They are energy centers. They're not where they are in huge, large cities just because of some coincidence. There's energy and power in these places. London, Rio de Janeiro.
Being so by remote degree or of blood or by adoption. There are many whites now resident claiming to be Indians whose claims have not as yet been acted upon by the nations. Pay attention. Negroes are frequently met who speak nothing but Indian languages and are Indians by tribal law and custom. And others are met who call themselves Indians who are not yet been so acknowledged by the tribes. These circumstances necessarily produce some confusion as to the number of Indians separately designated. However, the total population as given is correct. The difficulties surrounding the taking of this census were augmented by the fact that enrolling the Indians in it frequently occurred that it was necessary to equip 2 or sometimes 3 interpreters to accompany the Indians. All right.
Corn palace. This building is allegedly made out of corn, bro. This entire palace. Green screen is messed up on TikTok, so I can't show y'all the full thing. This is a picture from 1942. Do you believe that this was built from corn by people that use a mail carry system of horses and buggies? A new civilization? It's another picture from 1942, bro. Or was this a different purpose building? And they put corn over it. We're living on the ancient remains of old world, bro. A lot of these mansions that you could visit, they got basements that go floors under, bro. If y'all want more like content like this, sub to my IC Tartaria page, man. Because I find this real interesting. I'm gonna be building this channel forever. They cracked the bells and cracked our frequency, man. These pictures just crazy. And you see this a lot. And they said they used them for aluminum for bullets or some goofy shit like that. We're not buying that, bro. Look, and look who's standing by them, good Freemasons. Hands in your, get your hands on my pocket. Just knock like disrespect. Burning buildings now that contain high frequency bills. Look at this one. That was like, bro, just lunging the bill out of a high story building, like just. So not only is we walking on buried, mud flooded ancient civilizations everywhere in this world, and most of the mansions you see, I just saw something called the Corn Palace. That fucked my head up. Just lying about anything. But they also lowered the frequency on the realm. Why though? Who did this? There's no way it was just some rich oil guzzlers. This had to be something different, bro. That's why I said, bro, I'm tired of that. I'm not playing no race car, no sexism card. It's about these families, bro. Who families lied about who and who been deceived? Who is using their hidden hand to push these agendas, bro? You can tell they took all the spice and flavor out. Bro, this is a building in Moscow, bro. It looked like something that came out of Disney, man. And you know the whole planet probably used to look like this, bro. Amazing and beautiful. And all the buildings you walked in gave you more net, gave you more power, more energy. Now you walk in to see plastic. Now they just throwing up these disgusting, ugly, 15-minute high rises, man. No energy in it. Just occupying patients, occupying occupants. Not no other purpose. Oh, it's a purpose. Yeah. We gonna constrict that electricity. Well, how we gonna shake back, bro? Like, I don't think we can ever go back to them times. That's crazy. That's crazy, bro. If y'all want to hear more videos like this, sub to my YouTube, IC Tartaria. I'm gonna start getting on them. I'm gonna start getting on that.
And hear me out here. Afro-Indigenous. So, and that basically states that written into the Mexican Constitution, it is now law that Afro-Indigenous are recognized as full citizens of Mexico and are afforded their indigenous status. And then she went on to state that Mexico recognizes that Afro-Indigenous people were on this continent hundreds of years before the Spaniards stepped 1 foot on the soil. It completely changes the narrative of what we've been taught. It completely changes the idea.
So in my last video, I said we were going to come back to this. And so these are a few of our misnomers, that we've been misnamed throughout the years. As you can see, in 1492, it started off as Indian, i.e. the Native Americans, right? So here it comes about again in the 1960s, where it says clearly the original people of this land, and then they put in quotation marks, Native American. Okay, so on Indigenous Peoples Day, it says the Native Americans again. Pause to read if you need to. And then it says that Indigenous peoples were forcibly removed from ancestral lands, which means our ancestors, correct? So in doing my research, I was like, well, what's the difference between a citizen and a national? And we're going to answer that for you. So here it says a citizen is a political status. Now I need y'all to remember that because that's very important. Then it says a citizen is a person. Okay. So y'all remember the straw man we was talking about? The artificial person? So then it says a person or a man considered according to the rank they hold in society, right? It goes on to say terms may include artificial beings as corporation. It also says a corporation is also a person under a penal statute. So in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, if you're considered a human and not a person, then you have human rights. As Indigenous people, we have human rights. Article 3 says political status. The right to freely determine their political status. So if you're a citizen, your political status is whatever the United States says your political status is, because you're a citizen. If you're a national, you get to determine your own political status. And if you're indigenous to this land, then that makes you a national, which means that your political status is not that of a person, which is fictitious. So I'm saying all that to say, once you declare your nationality, you come out of your fictitious person status. You are no longer a part of the corporation. You are a human being. If you want to be a citizen of the United States, that makes you a person, which makes you fictitious. So you have to get rid of your straw man by declaring your nationality in order to even become a human being, but you're a human being by birth.
Let's just change the name as much as possible to throw you all off so you really don't know what's going on. Let's keep switching the identity to hide the people. Why don't we just keep renaming you? Are you Negro? Oh, no, you're not Negro. No, you're colored. No, you're not colored. You're African American. And this is what they name you. The slavers name you this. Because I know a white guy who grew up in South Africa. And he now lives in America. He is an African American. And more African American than most. Do you see how African American is a misnomer? It's a misnomer. Don't check that box. It's a title given to blacks by democratic slavers. Okay? Let's be real. They want you to check the box just like they want the Anglo-Saxon to check the Caucasian box. It's not true.
Weren't the pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
Here we have a hard paste porcelain ornament artwork that depicts what an American looked like back in the 1700s, 1765 to be exact, right? And this is from Frankenthal Porcelain Manufactory in Germany. So we have what they depicted the American Indians to look like in the 1700s. All right, so we're gonna check out more. But before we do, let's zoom in and see the phenotype, the facial features, the body type, skin complexion. The headdress is regalia, attire, right? So we have the feather headdress. We have the feathers around his arm, his upper arm. You have the quiver of arrows, and that's the bow. I think the strap for the bow. Can't really see it. But look who he looks like. Looks like a copper-colored American Indian. There's only one identity and depiction for American Indians, and you're looking at them.
It's like they're saying, this black guy got, beat to death in Memphis, and by these racist cops. Racist cops, huh? All the cops were black. But now it comes out that, the guy was screwing around with one of the cops' ex-wives or ex-girlfriends, something like that. It's like, but when they find out that these counties, and especially out in California and everything, they have gangs within these law enforcement crews. And they go around and, because who's going to go second guess them? And you wonder why there's, over 60% of the prison population is black. I'm not saying African American because they're not African American. They're the Aboriginals. There was no such thing. Because they were the true Native Americans. They're the copper-colored race. Look up Dane Calloway and watch his shows. That man, Dane Calloway, God. I mean, he is fucking beyond brilliant. The research he does, whoo! He goes way deep into this shit. And when you start realizing, it's like, what they, because you have people out there saying, it didn't happen to me or this or that. It's like, it didn't happen to you. We should fucking look at everything and think, you know what? That happened to us. Because it doesn't matter what skin color you are, what fucking, I don't care if you have, whatever. If you're a human being, yeah, they did it to us.
So, we're here in Utah, Judah, Jehudah, Judah, Utah. As we saw in the last videos, the copper-colored tribes were here. The Hebrew copper-colored tribes were here. We saw how the Aztec and the Mayas had a Moses-like figure lead them to their promised land. We saw how there was the Decalogue stones in New Mexico, in the Holy Newark stones as well in Ohio, showing evidence, early evidence of the story of Moses. Could he have been here? The Aztecs and the Mayas write about it before the Spaniards were here. They already had that Exodus story. Could it have been here? We're going to take a look at this Bible verse, Deuteronomy 34.
All right, so we're going to start today reading Deuteronomy 34 just to get a reference of what we're talking about here. And again, I'm going to show you that all these places in this verse are in Utah, all right? And it says here, Deuteronomy 34, and Moses went up from the plains of Moab, all right? Moab, that's a location, onto the mountain of Nebo, another location, to the top of Pisgah, a third location, that is over against Jericho, a fourth location. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, fifth location, and unto Dan, or Daniel, right? Another location, and all of Naphtali, or Nephi, and the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah, unto the utmost sea, all the land, the whole land of Judah. So in Deuteronomy 34, they're talking about a trip, a migration Moses is taking, and what he's doing when he's in these places, how he can see all the land of Judah from the top of Mount Nebo and the top of Mount Pisgah. And the very first location that Moses went up from the plains of Moab. All right, we're on Google Earth. We're going to touch the hijack with the, the balls, the sphere balls. All right, now is there a Moab in Utah? Let's look that up. So Moab, Utah, right? And we do have a place here. As we can see, we're going to go right to it. Moab, Utah. And what's significant about Moab, Utah, that it actually isn't a plain. As you can see, this is a plain, very flat area surrounded by desert and a little bit of hills and mountains. All right, this is a plain, the plains of Moab. All right, as it says here, and Moses went up from the plains of Moab. All right, Moab city in Utah. Just want to show you some of these pictures. Look at this. All right, this is the archways and the desert that is there. All right, you see all this prestige land, Utah. All right, Moab. All right, Moab, and the plains of Moab. Back on the verse, we have him going from the plains of Moab onto the mountain of Nebo, onto the mountain. So he went from Moab, the plains of Moab, onto the mountain of Nebo. Now, is Mount Nebo in Utah too? All right, so we're going to type Mount Nebo, and look what comes up right away, Mount Nebo, Utah. All right, we're going to go to Mount Nebo, Utah from Moab. As you can see here, it's taking us there. Oh, Mount Nebo, it's just right over here. Mount Nebo, look at that. Mount Nebo, look how high that is, right? From the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo. All right, some of the pictures here of Mount Nebo. Yes, Mount Nebo is in Utah, all right? And it's actually a lot taller than the fake Mount Nebo in Palestine today, all right? We're going to show that later on today. I'm going to show you guys that, all right? Again, Mount Nebo. All right, so real quick, just want to show you on Google Maps, as you guys can see, Moab down here, right? The plains of Moab, right? A plain, and it goes up to a mountain, Nebo, a Mount Nebo, which walking would take 70 hours or 206 miles. So very possible for Moses to go ahead and do that. Of course, he can walk that or horse. You know, that's what they were doing back in those days. All right. So just wanted to show you guys Mount Nebo, Moab. Already 2 locations are in Utah. All right, look at the mountain, look how high that is. And you can see the whole land of Utah from here, especially the surrounding towns and places. Look, Nephi, Goshen. All right, we ain't done. The next verse of the Bible says, unto the mountain of Nebo, and then from there to the top of Pisgah, another mountain that is over against Jericho. So now we got to look for Pisgah. All right, is there a mountain called Pisgah near in Utah and near Mount Nebo in Moab? Is there? Let's go see. Type Mount Pisgah / Utah, and we got it right away. Mount Pisgah, Utah. Check this out. It's right over here. Again, Mount Pisgah in Utah. Mount Pisgah.
Tell me the whole story. I'll fill in the blanks.
I think I also recall him saying that Barack Obama wasn't the first black president. So I started looking this stuff up and found out there were 14 presidents before George Washington and 7 black presidents before Barack Obama.
Most Indians don't know what I'm about to expose in this video, and that is, there's no such thing as tribal sovereignty under the United States. Now this is easily provable, and it's a well-known fact that we were all colonized. So how can you have sovereignty when you're still under colonial occupation? That's point number 1. But moving on, let's dissect this nonsensical comment that this dude left. He said, by federal law, I'm a sovereign citizen. That's why we're allowed to have our own government and law enforcement on tribal land. Did y'all catch it? The blatant contradiction? You can't say you're sovereign in one sentence and in the next sentence say you're allowed to do something. Because that word allow implies your subordinate status. Because if somebody allows you to have something, that means it's a privilege. And no federal law says anything about a sovereign citizen because a sovereign citizen doesn't exist. But since you want to talk law, let's get into what the courts have to say about the so-called Indian status. Case number 1 is the Supreme Court case of Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock. It seems to us that this is within the competency of Congress. These Indian tribes are wards of the nation. They are communities dependent on the United States, dependent largely for their daily food, dependent for their political rights. Side note, nationality determines your political rights. Next case we have Murphy versus Warden, coming from the 10th Circuit of the United States Court of Appeals. 18 U.S.C. section 1151. The term Indian country means all lands within the limits of any Indian reservation under the jurisdiction of the United States government. Now here's where they get real disrespectful and blunt. Only Congress can disestablish or diminish a reservation. In Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock, the Supreme Court said Congress has the power to unilaterally abrogate treaties made with Indian tribes. Congress possesses plenary power over Indian affairs, including the power to modify or eliminate tribal rights. This includes the power to eliminate or reduce a reservation against a tribe's wishes and without its consent. Now, does any of that sound like sovereignty or a people that's... But let's go to the next case, Acosta versus County of San Diego. And here's what they state, that reservation Indians are wards of the nation under the guardianship of the United States government. But we're not going to stop there. Let's get into some additional resources. Book reference. Indians, and they put in quotations for a reason, is a name given by the European conquerors of America to its original inhabitants. So right off the bat, if you call yourself an Indian, what you're really doing is you're verbally submitting yourself to the jurisdiction of the same people who colonized you. And here's how they lied to you. The word means the Aborigines of America. Now let's use some common sense. How can Indian mean Aborigine of America if America and India are two different places? That's like saying the Aborigine of Africa is European. And if that example doesn't make sense, then neither should the definition of Indian, meaning the Aborigine of America. But the same people who took over are the ones that's miseducating you today. Now I said all that to say this. Whether you call yourself an Indian, Black, African American, or whatever you want to call yourself, we're all going through the same problem. So it makes no sense to argue on TikTok all day who's the original Aborigines when we're all getting fucked over. So everything I read about pertaining to so-called Indians in this video is also applies to so-called Black people.
Do you guys see that? National Geographic. All right. This book is going to tell you something we've been telling you the last couple of years. America's a true old world. It's older than Egypt. It's older than Asian civilizations. It's older than the British Isles. It's going to tell us right now. Okay, we're going to go right into the introduction. Right in the introduction, we go to this paragraph. Right here to the right, it says, coming to America. We're going to zoom in. It says, Indians are indigenous to the Americas. Okay, period. Although many people examine the prevailing theories of Paleo-Indian migrations from Asia to North America and end up thinking we're all immigrants here, all right? They think those are all theories, those are all opinions from people who don't actually do research and believe everything they heard in elementary school. Yeah, our teachers lied to us, guys. Listen to what it's going to say here. It says, the fact of the matter is that Indians arrived in the Americas and developed a diverse array of cultures and languages, inhabiting the entire hemisphere, all right? So there was already peoples here is what they're telling you, all right? And they developed high culture, high civilization before, and this is in the entire hemisphere, right? Before there were any humans living in what is now England. The British Isles were entirely encased in ice until 12,000 years ago, all right? So all these ancient Picts and all these Chatan clan, all these people, they weren't there 12,000 years ago, but there was people here in the Americas. And not only there, guys, this is what it's going to say. And many thousands of years before the emergence of ancient Chinese, Egyptian, or Phoenician civilization.
False can you find? And there's lots in history. I was looking around the internet and came across the images of the 1893 Chicago World Exposition. And it blew my mind because it looked like ancient Rome in the middle of downtown Chicago. And as I looked at it further, well, here's another one in Philadelphia, here's another one in St. Louis, in Buffalo, in San Francisco, and then as soon as they were done, they tore them all down and threw them in the garbage. That just told me there's something wrong with all of these. The story of the expositions is a gigantic lie. And I think it's so huge of a lie because I think they're right at a bridge point when so many things about the 1800s that seem strange and weird, right as this sort of period ends of unbelievable strangeness, and all of a sudden these fairs spring up all over the world with impossible buildings we're talking about, which are colossal structures. Chicago built 700 acres of fair in supposedly less than 2 years. St. Louis built 1,200 acres of exposition buildings. One of the buildings in Chicago, the manufacturer's building, would house 300,000 people. There's a giant statue in the middle of the lagoon. It was called the Golden Lady, and it was known as the Statue of the Republic. It was 65 feet tall. They say it was covered in gold leaf that had copper underneath, but others speculate it was actually made out of solid gold. So you're talking 65-foot high, potentially solid gold statue. We're talking giant structures and looking like ancient Rome with towers and domes and columns and the most fine, ornate pieces to them in these record, unbelievable times. Then as soon as they're done, chuck them in the garbage. Like Jackson Park is a swamp. So supposedly they had to drive down tens of thousands of wooden stakes in order to support the weight of everything. They dug out massive lagoons, lakes. They had a canal system that ran through the entire exposition. They also had an above-ground electric train. An electric train, well, where's the electricity coming from? That's running around the park. They had a moving walkway down by the shore. Not enough people are asking, where does this technology come from?
This book is just loaded with stuff. An Inquiry into the Origins of the Antiquities of America by John Delafield, Jr. Copyright 1839. 1839, early 1840s. Just as we now wander among the mysterious remains of a race which once possessed all of this land, and pausing beneath some lofty mound crested with sturdy oaks which have stood for centuries, and are now nourished with the decayed materials of a former generation, or measuring the exact angles and regular outlines of some vast system of warlike defense, the ramparts, for which the traditions of no race known among us have the least explanation, are deeply impressed with the evidence that we are constantly walking over the graves of an immense population and pained with a sense of utter darkness as to everything connected with them, except that they bequeath to posterity these existing and confounding traces of their existence. What amazes me about this is that this is a history book, okay? And so is the other one I have from Julian Hawthorne. They're both American history books that were taught. And now everybody thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's crazy. These people knew this. They knew it. It was common knowledge. But you and I were taught that this was virgin land when we got here. There was just Native Americans running around on horses and teepees. They didn't say anything about ramparts, big structures, mounds with bones in them of people. They don't tell you any of that. And they don't tell you either that they were giants. Yeah.
Periodic table. Why did they erase the ether? No, really. Ask yourself, why did this ancient concept, this infinite, invisible ocean of energy, suddenly vanish from science? Once upon a time, ether wasn't just theory. It was the primordial god of light, the upper sky, the breath of the gods themselves. The ancients knew it. They encoded it in myth. But by 1908, it was wiped clean, replaced with scarcity. You ever hear about the first electric cars? Not the ones you see today. I'm talking about the ones that disappeared from history, the ones rumored to pull free energy straight from the atmosphere. Yeah, they were using metals like copper, gold, magnets, even whispers of red mercury, devices designed to tame the ether itself. No wires, no fossil fuels, just endless natural power all around us. So why did they disappear? Same reason ether did. Same reason we've been told the only way forward is through oil, gas, and a monthly electric bill. Because the moment you realize there's infinite energy above your head is the moment you stop being dependent on them.
I'll destroy Tartaria. Please, let me explain. Their timeline is exactly the same as the reset. Take a look at this. If you look at the Rothschilds timeline, it's the same as the Great Reset in 1776. Look at this, guys. It's uncanny. When the Rothschilds were becoming established, it's exactly the same time as when Tartaria was on their downfall and the reset was happening. Has anyone ever looked at this? It's obvious, guys. Again, in 1776, it's the same timeline as the Rothschilds timeline. When they were coming into power, it was the same time as the Great Reset, guys, and the mud floods. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Also, this is the Rothschilds' humble abode. Look at the etheric technology on the top. I think they were a Tartarian family, and they took over, and they knew exactly what was happening, so they made a new world order. Also, the Rothschilds are connected to the Oddfellows. The Oddfellows were in charge of all the orphanages through the Reset, and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Bit weird, yeah? Also, the Rothschilds funded all the wars, and the wars were only there to destroy all of the old world architecture, guys. Ain't it really adding up now? Understand? And last but not least, the Rothschilds loaned £400,000 back in 1850s. Today, that would be 4.7 billion to the Catholic Church. Come on, guys. They took it from old world to new world, can't you see? And they also destroyed all of the world fairs.
Jones, I believe this was like, if I'm not mistaken, like 1830 something. Let's see if we can find the date real quick. 1843, all right? 1843. So let's go to page 25. We got some interesting stuff in this book. This book is weird because it randomly starts talking about biblical stuff, then it switches over to, you know, American Indians, and it switches over to biblical. Then I don't really understand why it does that. But a lot of these books that have to do with American Indians that was before the 1900s, they do that. They get really religious when they talk about Native Americans. Maybe because they know that the Native Americans are Hebrews, but look what it says right here in this paragraph right here. Now, in every physical characteristic of the Northern, did the Mexican differ? So we're talking about the Northern Indians of the North American continent. Then we're talking about the Mexicans of Central America, right? And it says they're completely different. It says they bore no analogy as being of the same race, either in feature, courage, endurance, or general religion. The North, the fight was man to man and no retreat, death or victory. But look at this. It says Jerusalem or the grave. Jerusalem or the grave. Why did it say that? I don't understand. I want y'all to help me understand. It says in the North, meaning in the Northern American continent, when the Spanish was fighting these Indians, it said Jerusalem or the grave. They did not retreat. What do they mean by Jerusalem or the grave? Basically, they're saying that the American Indians in North America had the same fight power, the same courage as Judas Maccabeus. That's what it's saying. And let's continue to read. It says, some of the Mexican nations worship idols and knew not God, for they sacrificed human beings to propitiate their savage deities. Not so the noble Northerns. They worship the one God who declared the first lawgiver, thou shalt not have other gods before me. And their only human sacrifice is the invader of their lands and birthright. So they're talking good about the North American Indians, saying they did not do the sacrifice like the Central Americans, but they were going to kill the people who invade their land. And they worship the one true God. This is the stuff you find in these old books.